Beautiful streets, croissants, haute couture, and all things glamorous. France has always had the reputation of being one of the crown jewels of European culture. But beneath all the glitz and glam, the classy nation's been dealing with delicate issues from economic troubles to political drama and social unrest, making them less prestigious than you think. What are the details of these issues? And is France gradually becoming the sick man of Europe? Stay with us in this video to find out.
The formal procedure that shows that your budget is going over the limits that were set in the Eurozone.
France has always been the country of dreams, elegance, power, innovation, and all that good stuff. Some decades ago, it was Europe's star, running the show with a booming economy, a culture everyone wanted to copy, and Paris, the ultimate hotspot. France in its glory days was admirable. Economically, it was untouchable. The country produced sleek cars like Renaults and Peugeots, its Airbus planes soared through the skies, and its farms were the breadbasket of Europe. If you needed wheat, wine, or cheese, France was the go-to. And let's not forget about tourism. Paris wasn't called the City of Lights for nothing. Tourists flocked in to take pictures of the Eiffel Tower, soak in the romance, and sip wine on the Riviera. Even politically, France led the pack. It was a founding member of the EU and NATO, helping shape Europe into what it is today. The French knew how to flex their global power while keeping their streets chic. Paris wasn't just a city, it was the epicenter of art, fashion, and intellectual thought. If it was trendy, it probably started there. Fast forward to now. France is still fabulous in many ways, but the cracks are starting to show. France's economic troubles are serious, and they're weighing heavily on the country's future. First, let's talk about the debt. It's rising, and not in a good way. France has been overspending for the past 2 years, and its public deficit is expected to hit over 6% of its economy in 2024, up from 5.5% in 2023. Currently, France's national debt sits at a whopping 112% of its GDP.
France's debt has reached a record 3.228 trillion euros, amounting to 112% of GDP.
This means the country owes more than it's producing in a year, a level that makes it harder to invest in anything new or improve its infrastructure. The more France borrows to keep things running, the harder it becomes to escape from underneath it. To make matters worse, unemployment is still a big problem in France. While it's not jumping through the roof, it's stuck in a high and persistent state. By the third quarter of 2024, the unemployment rate rose to 7.4%, slightly higher than the previous 7.3%, with 2.3 million people unemployed, a rise of 35,000 people from last quarter. This creates a double issue for the economy. Fewer people working means fewer people paying taxes, while more people need government benefits. Now throw in rising borrowing costs. As interest rates climb, France's government must pay more to borrow money. This is like having a loan with an interest rate that keeps going up, leaving the country stuck paying more for the same amount of debt. It's money that could have been used for investment or even paying down debt, but instead it's just going to lenders. As a result of all this, layoffs have become more and more common. Companies, unsure of the future and struggling with the financial strain, are cutting down their workforce to save money. It's not just big corporations either. Smaller businesses are feeling the heat. As people lose their jobs, their buying power shrinks, further slowing the economy. And the worst part? Growth is flatlining. The economy isn't growing, but it isn't shrinking either. It's stuck in limbo. When the economy stagnates like this, it creates a sense of hopelessness and frustration. People stop investing, businesses stop expanding, and consumers hold on to their wallets a little tighter. In short, France isn't what it used to be. When it comes to politics, things in France are a mess.
France announced a new cabinet this week following the surprise resignation of the government.
In just 1 year, the country's had 4 different governments, causing constant change but no real progress. Every time a new government's formed, it brings more debate and finger-pointing with little action. Even passing a budget's become a huge challenge. The parliament is so divided that getting anything done feels nearly impossible, with each group pulling in different directions. At the center of all this chaos is President Macron, who was once seen as a leader with big plans for France and Europe. Now, though, his leadership is losing power and credibility. He's struggling to hold things together while the country's stuck in a political gridlock. In addition, Marine Le Pen, the far-right leader, is waiting for the right moment to take advantage of the situation and push her agenda. Meanwhile, the left-wing parties are also causing problems, making it harder to find solutions. This ongoing stalemate means that important decisions are getting delayed or ignored, making France's political future look uncertain. France, a country that was once the cornerstone of European leadership, is now struggling to keep its government functioning. With the stakes higher than ever, especially in terms of dealing with economic problems, social unrest, and Europe's challenges, France's political future is hanging in the balance. Then there's Paris, the iconic city of light. While it still dazzles, it's also facing some pretty serious issues. Overcrowding is becoming a real problem. Paris itself has 2.14 million residents, while the whole Paris region has about 12,997,058 people. To add to that, each year around 33 million tourists come to Paris, and there's also another 214.2 million passengers arriving at Gare du Nord every year, staying or passing through Paris to explore the rest of France or Europe. Quite literally, the city is bursting at the seams with tourists, immigrants, and locals, all vying for space in the same streets, making it feel more cramped and less romantic. Due to this, prices have skyrocketed in recent years, and living costs are through the roof. For Parisians, it's becoming harder and harder to afford rent, groceries, or even a simple coffee at a cafe. Add to this a troubling surge in crime. While Paris was once considered a safe haven for travelers and residents alike, it's now dealing with rising levels of theft, assaults, and general street-level violence. Some neighborhoods have become hotspots for criminal activity, making both locals and tourists uneasy. And frankly speaking, it's about a lot more than just ghetto-like crime rate. Social unrest is also bubbling over. Movements like the Yellow Vests have made it clear that many people are fed up with how the government's handling the economy. The cost of living is high, wages are stagnant, and inequality is widening. As a result, protests and strikes have become almost regular in Paris, with frustrated citizens taken to the streets to demand change. So, what's the reason for all this? France's economic debt is largely due to the massive overspending during the COVID-19 pandemic and the energy crisis caused by the war in Ukraine. The government shelled out a lot of money to keep things afloat, but now it's left holding the bill. The country's financial situation is a mess, and the government's caught in a tough spot. To fix it, they have two options: cut spending, which would anger citizens who rely on those public services, or raise taxes, which would make everyone unhappy. Neither choice is popular, and neither will bring quick relief. The political issues, on the other hand, got worse after the 2024 legislative elections. The results left the country with a hung parliament, meaning no party could get a solid majority. The new Popular Front, a left-wing coalition, led with the most seats, but that didn't lead to any clear direction. President Macron called for a resignation of the government in July 2024. But it stayed in place while negotiations over a new prime minister dragged on. The situation's made worse by the fact that 4 different governments have come and gone in just 1 year, making it feel like nothing gets done. Political infighting and constant gridlock have left the leadership looking weak and indecisive, which is bad news for both France and Europe. France and Germany have traditionally been the powerhouses of the EU, but when they can't agree on anything, the whole European Union suffers. Without a strong, unified leadership, it feels like the EU is drifting aimlessly, with no one at the helm to steer it in the right direction. Socially, there's a growing divide between the haves and have-nots, and it's starting to boil over. The cost of living is rising, inequality is becoming more visible, and frustration is building. Movements like the Yellow Vests have shown just how deep these issues run. People are tired of feeling like they're not getting a fair shot at the good life, and they're taken to the streets to demand change. Issues like immigration reform, climate change policies, and military spending have all become battlegrounds for the country's political factions, but no one can seem to find the solution. Overall, France's real problem is that it's stuck in a cycle of economic strain, political paralysis, and social unrest. The country is facing an identity crisis. What was once a global leader is now struggling to keep up. And with no easy solution in sight, it's unclear how France will break free from this mess. So, what does the future look like for France? Well, the future's uncertain, but it's not hopeless. The country's always been resilient, with the resources, talent, and history to bounce back. However, the immediate outlook isn't great. With a public deficit predicted to reach 6.3% of GDP in 2024 and a downgraded credit rating, France faces mounting economic pressure. The European Union could impose sanctions if the country doesn't rein in its deficit, potentially costing France 1.5 billion euros every 6 months. Moreover, economic growth is expected to slow to just 0.2% by 2025, and unemployment is projected to rise 7.6% as companies like Michelin and Renault announce layoffs. To add to that, the global landscape is shifting. The rise of multipolarity and protectionism, particularly with the election of Trump and the likelihood of higher tariffs, will make it harder for French businesses to compete, especially in sectors like wine, textiles, and food. Small and medium-sized companies will be hit the hardest, unable to adapt as easily as the bigger players. However, despite the challenges, the future is not all bleak. France has an unparalleled ability to adapt and innovate, and its rich history of resilience offers hope for a turnaround. With the right leadership and a collective effort to address both economic and social divides, France has the potential to rise again. The future may be uncertain, but if there's one thing France has proven over time, it's that it can turn adversity into opportunity and emerge stronger. What do you think about France's current predicament and its place among Europe's elite? Let us know in the comments section, and enjoy our other videos.